But let me now introduce our fifth session. The high-stakes session brings together industry leaders, policymakers, and energy experts to discuss Ottawa's energy reality head-on. What are the barriers to sustainable growth? What bold solutions exist? And what immediate steps must we take to ensure a stable, sustainable, and future-ready energy system? The time to act is now. Our grid can drive Ottawa's potential. Please welcome to the stage the moderator of this session, the Executive Director of the Canada North Business Association. Here is Kelly Days.
Hello. I'm so thrilled to be here. It's nice to come downtown. I'm just always so impressed with how beautiful this city is, and so hopefully you can maintain your attention on this stage with this amazing backdrop. I'd now like to invite our panelists up onto the stage. If I could get Bryce Conrad, the President and CEO of Hydro Ottawa. Where is he? Oh, here he comes. All right. Woo. Wendy Stevenson, City Manager at the City of Ottawa. Heidi Brendan-Holler Prasad, VP of Commercial Strategy and Business Development, Enbridge Gas. I'll kick us off while everyone gets comfortable there. So, when I was first asked to speak as the moderator for this session, it may not be obvious why the Executive Director of the Canada North Business Association is moderating this session. But I've been working in economic development for a very long time, about 25 years, and I've had the pleasure now of representing Canada North Research Park, so 570 companies, 13 billion of GDP per year, the largest tech park in Canada. And for the first time in my entire career, I've been hearing companies talk about energy. In terms of things like energy is the new gold, requirements for more energy, resilient energy. Any blip in the grid, any downtime affects these companies in terms of thousands of dollars. Green energy, how did they meet their net zero requirements, many being driven from headquarters in Europe? Companies like Nokia, Cisco, and Ericsson are adding green energy solutions like ice to cool their data centers, battery solutions, solar power, all of this to meet net zero requirements, but also to lower their energy costs. So I've learned so much about this topic in the last few months. So things like 30% of the companies in Canada North Tech Park, 30% of their operating costs are power. So Ottawa has a very unique economic engine, our history in communications and hardware. Many of these companies have massive research labs. Nokia's largest lab in the world is here in Ottawa in the tech park. One of the companies, I don't know if I can say who, but their energy bill is $10 million a year. So for the first time, energy is really becoming a very big topic in the tech sector. So when I think about energy, maybe just to finish my opening remarks, I've had the pleasure of traveling around the world. Canada is seen as a global leader in energy, both in the transmission and generation of energy, so especially things like nuclear power, but also our distribution across our amazing country, lots of different regions. And so for Ottawa to be competitive and attract top businesses, energy must be leveraged as a strategic asset. So I'm really excited today to be moderating on this topic, and so excited to have these amazing, amazing experts on our panel. So let's get started. I'm going to start here with gas and electricity. So today, gas and electricity are both a critical part of our energy supply. However, given the renewed focus around green energy, we must be creating many conversations in terms of Enbridge and Hydro Ottawa on how are they planning for the future. So Heidi, I'm going to start with you. What role do you see for Enbridge in supporting energy transition today and into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Whoop, test, hello. Thanks a lot, Kelly, appreciate that. And good afternoon, everyone. When I had entered earlier today, it was right when we had the previous panel on entertainment, and I thought, wow, that's a really tough group to follow. So hopefully you're as excited as I am to talk about energy this afternoon. So when I think about energy transition, I really think about Enbridge and the pivotal role we have to play as it relates to the energy evolution or the energy transition, as some people talk about. Enbridge is the largest natural gas storage, transmission, and distribution company in North America, and we've just recently purchased 3 U.S. utilities, which means and positions Enbridge to also be the largest natural gas distribution company in North America. And so with that type of a platform, it is absolutely pivotal for us to play a role with respect to energy transition. In 2020, we set some pretty ambitious goals around ensuring that we were positioned for net zero emission from our operations by 2050, and we are absolutely on track to achieving that. And so with that type of an aspiration and commitment, and quite frankly delivering upon that, it even further underpins how important being a part of the energy transition narrative and quite frankly having an active role in that, how important that really is. We have operating assets across our entire energy sector, including 3,500 or over 3,500 megawatts of renewable energy projects. We continue to make investments in solar, wind, renewable gas, hydrogen, as well as carbon capture and storage. And in 2022, we were the first to put in a power-to-gas hydrogen generating facility, as well as blending hydrogen into our natural gas stream. And then more recently, we've put in 100% hydrogen combined heat and power unit in one of our facilities in Markham. So again, it just demonstrates how we are actively investing in and demonstrating how important it is for Enbridge to be a part of the energy transition. We really recognize that it's going to take all forms of energy to be part of the transition. And I think we've all seen, too, that many forms of government have started to also identify how necessary it is not just to have electrification, but have all sources of energy. It truly is an all-of-the-above situation. What we're seeing here in Ontario specifically is a massive surge in electrification need in the future. And I think a lot of the forecasts that have been coming out are very clear around indicating that it will be necessary to have an all of the above. In fact, Ontario just launched one of its largest procurements for power, and it's been really clear that it won't just be a single source energy for that power procurement, but rather an all of the above. And so in terms of your question around like what role do we have to play, I think Enbridge has demonstrated that we're committed and quite frankly that we do have a role to play, and we continue to want to be part of that entire conversation.
Yep, very excited to see that hydrogen generator. This next question, I'd like to forward to Bryce. The last thing I ever want anyone to leave this room with, we have an amazing energy system here in Ottawa. We enjoy amazing, reliable energy, but we do need to make sure that we're preparing for the future. So my question for you, Bryce, is how is our energy system performing today overall, would you say? Maybe, a little competitive in here, maybe against some other regions that we compete with. But are there any immediate steps that we need to take today to ensure that we have a stable, sustainable, and a future-ready energy system?
Yeah, sure. It's good. So, is this on? Wendy asked if I was going to behave myself up here, and I said yes. And I'm immediately going to take that back. So whoever is paying me $10 million a month in electricity, thank you. I have no idea who you are, but I really appreciate it. To your question, which is a good one. Look, we're in this is a long-term game. This is a long-term business. We build things now that are generational assets. So how is the system responding today? The system's in very good shape. Our reliability numbers are best in class. So that means when you walk into a room, you turn the light on, the lights go on 99.997% of the time. That's as good as it gets in Ontario. That said, we've had our ass kicked by some pretty serious weather over since 2018. I think we've had 10 tornadoes, a 1 in 1,000 year storm, a 1 in 1,000 year flood, a storm called the derecho that none of us had ever heard of before, which just cleaned our clock. and sort of brought into, it's a pretty stark realization that how people, how vulnerable we are to climate change in general, but to these massive storm events. So we need to do a better job of planning and preparing for that. So what are we doing? In terms of storm hardening, we're investing in making the assets more, better equipped to deal with ice load, better equipped to deal with the winds, better equipped to deal with all the nonsense that God throws our way. In terms of long-term planning, Kelly, I know you're sensitive to Canada North, and I know Sir Terry Matthews is over there staring at me, making sure he's got lots of power. So we're investing heavily in the grid. Traditionally, we would build a new station every 5 years. Going forward, we're building a new station every year. That's just to keep pace with what we've got. And that's what we know today. So that part, I've got a table of engineers over there who are smarter than spit, and they can walk you through how this all works. It's not to quote Dick Cheney, they're the known knowns, the unknown knowns, and the unknown unknowns. The things that go bump in the night that we can't even plan on. That's the terrifying part. So if you'd asked me 3 years ago or 4 years ago what the hell generative AI was, I think I'd sat here and said, I don't have a clue. Now you've got these data centers that are coming in saying, I need 110 megawatts tomorrow. My answer is, okay.
Good luck.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know when and where you want to be. The NVIDIA chipset that runs these generative AI runs at 178 degrees. You put 30 or 40 of those things together and you got a blast furnace. So that's what we're dealing with now. That's the new stuff that we're aware of. You look south of the border, you're looking at like Microsoft is literally relighting up a nuclear reactor on 3 Mile Island to power its generative AI center. Facebook has got one out of Salt Lake City, again, a new nuclear reactor, a $1.5 billion nuclear reactor to power its generative AI center. So these are all just interesting statistics, but I guess the question that comes down for me is to meet the electrification demands that I know are coming our way, we need to double and triple the grid over the course of the next 25 years. And the question I have for the crowd is, has anyone ever tried to build something in this country? Like, it's damn near impossible. Yeah, you want me to triple the grid? It took 13 years in Vancouver to lay down a 4-kilometer piece of asphalt next to another 4-kilometer piece of asphalt at the Vancouver International Airport. So it took 14 years to build a parallel runway. Yet you want to triple the grid in 25 years. We need to change the game. We need to change the way we do business. We need to get lined up. And oh, by the way, this isn't just about Ottawa. This is nationally, and we're not just competing. Terrence to tell you, I'm sure he loves going abroad and kicking Germans' asses and everybody else in business. We're competing internationally. We're competing with real companies with real money for these jobs in these industries, and that's the challenge that's facing the utility. So, am I good today? Yeah. Am I good in the very near future? Yeah. But we have to get serious about how we build things in this country.
Couldn't agree more. Actually, my next question would be for Wendy. So when you think of the City of Ottawa's role in this discussion, I'm just wondering, how are you aligning your long-term energy planning with the broader goals of economic development, climate resilience, and livability? How's the city thinking about energy?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And I just got to remind you, Bryce, up here that we own you. So, yeah, just be careful what you say.
We're the only thing you own that makes money.
No, don't get me going. But I do want to talk a little bit about our long-term planning and the vision that we do have here at the city. And you think about climate change, what you both have talked about is very real. And we have a climate change master plan really guides, the things that we're going to do for decades into the city. And a number of strategies layered on top of that really help us get to where we need to go. Think about energy evolution, that has a city aspect, but also very much a community aspect in terms of how we're going to achieve our net zero by 2050. And I think, tied into all of that and what I'm hearing in this conversation, and what's so important is our economic development strategy. You talked about competitiveness. Yeah, I agree. It's a problem across Canada. It's a problem worldwide. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that Ottawa remains competitive and that Ottawa is a place that people want to be. It's where businesses want to be. It's where people want to live and where they want to work. And those are the pieces that we are aligning together to make sure that we as a city and we as a community are delivering on those things. And I think, one of the biggest things, the focus is really on that climate resiliency and that resiliency overall. Energy plays a huge part of that. It's really important. Bryce, you talk about, how you need to build for the future. We also look at what do we need to do in terms of alternate systems, right? Bringing alternate energy to the table to help people and help run those businesses. So thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, sorry, Kelly, if I could just follow up. I totally agree with what he said. I think the past is about nuclear reactors outside Toronto with long transmission lines down into this part of the world. That's the past. The future is you're going to have distributed energy resources scattered throughout the service territory so that you're no longer drawing on these massive nuclear reactors. You're able to sort of draw on local, like Chaudière Falls and other, local, whether they're batteries or other distributed energy resources. That's the future, and that's part of the grid that we need to build out. And quite frankly, that is a comparative advantage that we have here in the Ottawa region.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm so glad that you raised it that way because, like I said, when I think of the Canada Tech Park, we are seeing unprecedented growth in energy usage. We just announced an RFP that we're in the process of doing with Hydro Ottawa and the Ottawa Climate Action Fund to look at the demand for energy in our research sector over the next 5, 10, 20 years to be able to quantify that. And I think it's not following a hockey stick anymore. Those research labs, those AI, the data centers that they all have inside of their office buildings are doing this, right? Unprecedented growth. So we have to think differently about how we support those pockets of high energy use. Electrification is coming, right? We're all seeing this. I think maybe what we're seeing in the U.S. is slowing down vehicles maybe a little bit, but at least in Canada, it's definitely part of the mix. As we kind of think of climate change and electrification, one of the things I've become very aware of as I've had deep discussions on this topic is that there is some coverage in terms of subsidies to upgrade transmission, generation of energy, but not distribution. It seems to me that this is being downloaded to the utilities and to the municipalities. And so Sue Lang wanted me to get into a little bit of the contentious, provocative issues. So I wanted to talk a little bit, maybe if you let that topic just resonate a bit. What do you think about this? How can government, how should we be planning? Should this be downloaded onto municipalities? This is a darn big city, right? An incredibly large city. And getting the power to the people that need it is a huge cost. And how do we upgrade that? How do we pay for it? How do we think about that? So open the floor on that one. Who wants? Bryce, I know you've got a comment on this one.
Yeah, I was going to say preach. Look, I've said categorically the electrification journey that the country is on, largely driven by, and again, I use the line that the only more pro-nuclear government in the world than Ontario is in North Korea. Shouldn't take that long to catch. Jesus. Slow this morning. It's after lunch. Too much dessert. They're very pro-nuclear, and that's okay. That's great. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think they are subsidizing they're subsidizing generating assets across the board. They're subsidizing transmission across the board, and I very clearly have said that the electrification journey cannot end at the distribution line with our ratepayers having to pay the full freight. it's just far too big a bill. It's a bigger bill than any of us have ever seen. I mean, if you think about it in terms of what the Conference Board of Canada is saying, they're saying $1.7 trillion. I think that's underestimating it. So you take our portion of that, you layer that onto, the ratepayers, it's just not fair. So at some point along the way, the provincial and the federal government have to come together, and they have to find a way to support the local distributors, because you can have as much nuclear power as you want. You can have thousands of lines of transmission, but if you can't plug in your iPhone, it don't matter a damn bit. Simple as that.
Nobody else wants to touch that one?
I'll just say preach.
Thank you. But yes, definitely work needs to be done on that last mile solution. And as I said, for a city the size of Ottawa, physical size of Ottawa, it's an especially big problem. Okay, so for me, I think, one of the key areas for me is energy is key to economic growth, both in retaining the companies we have, enabling them to attract new projects, but also attracting new companies to our region. I mean, provinces like Newfoundland have said, we're closed to data centers, we're closed to high power business because we don't have the power. Like, this is happening especially all over North America. For the first time, I'm seeing site selectors come and say, I need 10 megawatts of power. I'm not even going to tell you who the company is, but do you have it or don't you? And then they're moving on to next. So definitely a great big theme. And, regional energy strategies are becoming key to attracting and retaining our companies. So I'm wondering, maybe in terms of Hydro Ottawa in particular, I have been so impressed over the years on the innovative approach you've taken to energy. Projects like Zibi, the Ottawa Hospital, innovative energy districts, which is an area that we're very interested in. Wondering, maybe, can we talk a little bit about this innovation and how important these new ideas and creating power at these high energy areas, how important that is going to be to the future energy distribution system? And how do we plan for that from the city perspective?
Sure, I can talk from the Hydro Ottawa perspective. When I joined Hydro Ottawa 14 years ago, there were 3 companies in Hydro Ottawa. There was obviously the distribution company, then there was a large, so we had a semi-large generating assets, and then we had an energy services company which would go around helping you install boilers and check on your energy usage and stuff like that. Today, I think we just had our board meeting a couple of days ago. I think we have 40. I think we're up to 47 companies now. And all of those are viable entities that are doing different things. You mentioned Zibi. That's an instance where we just said, working with a developer. I mean, God forbid a utility work with developers. We went down and said, we want to be part of this. This is an interesting piece of work, and we want to understand how it works and whether or not we can take it and scale it and replicate it. So, we partnered with Thea Partners, Windmill at the time, and Dream out of Toronto. And every person that lives, every business that's situated at Zibi right now is connected to a local utility that's 50% owned by Hydro Ottawa. So that's an example of some of the innovation that we've approached. We have taken the same approach in dealing with the city on the zero emission buses. Full credit to the city for seeing an opportunity and stepping up and saying we need to change. We have an opportunity to change the way we do our business, and we were there to help them and support them. And I think the project is going exceedingly well. Obviously it's still subject to the whims and demands of the guy south of the border who keeps tweeting and impacting supply chains, but otherwise it's going well. And there's other examples as well. We're a utility that owns a telecom company. Why do we own a telecom company? Well, because we think it's important. We think it's part of the way of the future. If you look at our system, it's completely digitized, it's completely censored, so I can pay Rogers and Bell to backhaul that data, or I can have my own company that backhauls that data. I'll take my own company. So those are all some of the innovative things that we've brought to the game. And I give full credit to the board for seeing beyond the regulated industry. Again, when I started, the regulated company accounted for 97% of our earnings. Now it's 70%. So it's proven to be a good thing from a community perspective, and it's proven to be a good thing financially for the company and the community. And as Wendy said, the taxpayers.
I just want to hop onto that, just to elaborate a little bit on the zero emission bus project that we're partnering with Bryce and the Hydro team on. It's an incredible project. We're electrifying our bus fleet across the city. And I want to say a huge thank you to our partner at Hydro. Really appreciate working with them, but also, you know, if it wasn't for the federal government program that allowed us to make that investment, they've set up a program there that can help fund some of this, as well as a partnership with the CIB, which allows us to borrow money to be able to finance this, and we basically pay it back through savings. So it's just incredible in terms of what we've been able to do. You know, we've launched it. We've got 18 electric buses on the street. There's more to come. Obviously, we've got 350 in the queue. As Bryce said, you know, the problem down south isn't helping in terms of pricing. And, you know, everybody's also trying to procure these buses, so it's hugely competitive at this time. But I think just a great example in terms of what we can do and find those alternative ways to fuel our future.
Yeah, I'd like to pile on as well. So there absolutely some of the innovation that both Bryce and Wendy have talked about. You know, it's not just that innovation. I think that there is real opportunity also for government to create conditions really for positive investment, not just in Ontario, but in Ottawa as well. And when I think about what those types of conditions look like, it's also everything from the innovation that we've just spoken about, and energy innovation, and bringing, you know, new, fresh ideas and great technologies to bear in the market. But it's also around, you know, thinking about how is it that we as I'll say even distribution companies, whether power or gas, can start to work together to do much more effective planning. Because I think that at the end of the day, you know, there's going to be at the consumer level, there'll be energy conservation opportunities that people will uptake and that they'll practice in their homes. But then we also have to think through what are we doing as business to make sure that we're also creating an environment whereby we are making it easier and more accessible for people, and to ensure that when people want to plug in their iPhones or flip that switch on, that they in fact have the power and the warmth in their homes that they expect and that they've had the luxury of having here in Canada.
Yeah, actually, you touched on something really important there, Heidi. I know that it's a very collaborative approach that all of the folks on this panel take when they're planning and building out their process. So I guess my question would be to all of you, maybe we could talk a little bit to the room about how do you collaborate? How do you think about a new development, a new area when you're building these things out? How does that collaboration work amongst all of you? Because you're all critical to the energy supply today.
If I could start, I would just actually say it's kind of automatic. And I say that from a position of good fortune, because if you were to talk to my colleagues in other parts of the province, they may have a different opinion. But from day one with Enbridge here, it's been kind of automatic. Like, we show up for meetings to talk about new new communities kind of thing. If Enbridge isn't there, we ask where they are. And conversely, if we're not there, they'll ask where we are kind of thing. Because we know that, notwithstanding some of the public pronouncements about, being off gas by 2030 and stuff like that, it's just not realistic. If I look over my left shoulder here, there's a whole downtown community that's powered by chillers and some pretty intensive power plants, and all of those require gas. And I don't have the capacity today or anytime in the very near future to take that load. So we're in this together. We're in this together for a while. There's some of my colleagues would argue that Enbridge is the dinosaur watching the ice come down the mountain, right? And I just don't see that. I see it as a collaborative opportunity to work together. We each have our lanes. We stick to our lanes. The planning, if we plan and they plan and you plan separately, it just doesn't make a damn bit of sense. So why would you do that? Why would you waste the time and energy? So if anyone's looking for a division between Hydro Ottawa and Enbridge, you got to go to a different meeting. It's not happening here.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. That's great.
Also a shareholder.
Phew.
Fantastic, lovely dividends. But like, and it isn't just at the local distribution company perspective. Like, I think it's also important to note that Enbridge also plays an active role in working with the IESO. And so from a provincial planning perspective, it is also critically important. Like, we're all getting the data center phone calls. We're all seeing the hockey stick spikes in electrification. And the reality is it's going to be an all of the above situation. And so we really have no choice but to work together. Quite frankly, that's the way we will be most effective, most quickly, as well as making sure that we're also taking care of the pocketbook. Like, it has to be affordable and reliable and sustainable. And we're not going to get there unless we actually all coordinate and collaborate together.
I'm just going to hop onto that a little bit too. At the city, I'm sure you've heard this expression a lot in terms of Team Ottawa. And not that I want to go back to the pandemic, but I think the pandemic taught us so much as a city in terms of how we do need to work together collaboratively, not just within, but out in our community as well. And that's what I'm hearing from my colleagues, is that none of us can go alone. We have to go together. And I think the same would be said of everyone in the room. And we're better together, and we can create that better future together.
Great. So, when I was thinking about this panel, it's taken over 100 years, I guess, to build the energy grid that we have today. It's created a lot of outdated regulation, policy concepts. It's created very old infrastructure, which we talked a little bit about. But with that comes bureaucracy and policy that can often be seen to slow things down. In Canada North, the City of Ottawa has given us a designation as a special economic district, recognizing that it's a key economic driver and engine for the city, but also recognizing that we do have some unique challenges, and again, energy being one that we're very aware of that we need to plan for to make sure it doesn't become an issue in the future. But I'm wondering maybe if we can talk a little bit about, bureaucracy, regulation, policy. How do we at the city level in particular, Wendy, how do we really, mitigate that as much as we can? From my opinion, I've seen nothing but the city trying very hard to work on this area. And I guess I'm just wondering, from inside the city, it definitely feels to me like there's an openness to trying to mitigate this. So maybe I would just turn that question over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And I think collaboration is really what hits home, trying to help, because we all have issues that we have to solve, and we all have a role to play in that. And I think that's really key. I know I wasn't here this morning. I heard there's some really great panels, but you talked about the Housing Task Force, and I think that's a great example in terms of breaking down those barriers within the community. We've wrapped an entire table with industry experts who are telling us what the barriers look like and what those walls look like. So I think it's really important that we have those discussions, we understand what the hurdles are, and we try to make it as easy as possible for everyone. Respecting the fact that I think we all have a job to do at the end of the day, and I hate to say it, but sometimes there are rules and regulations, but what can we live with, and what can we ask for help for? So I think it's all about the conversation and all about the collaboration.
I'll just throw in a few points. One, to Wendy's credit, I don't have to go back very far in my relationship with the city, who again owns me, to point out we were trying to install 24 electric car charging stations in Ottawa, and it took 3 years to get it through the processes. They've turned that page. That page has been turned. You now have a situation where, we have a conversation about switching the lights, switching out the street lights, moving from high sodium pressurized lights to LEDs. We came in, we pitched them the idea. We said, you don't have to pay a cent. It's the don't pay a cent event, the payments event, whatever you want to call it. You don't pay, we'll pay ourselves back out of the savings. We did the project for them in 4 years. They were energy positive in 6 years. So they now get $8 million a year going forward to their budget that they otherwise didn't have, and they've got a brand new set of lights. So those are the kind of things that you can do locally that are magical. But it's not just locally. If I go back to what I talked about earlier, it's provincially. It's, we happen to be endowed with the federal government, which is a blessing on most times. But, if I look at Shawjare Falls, and we're the custodian of that today, I had to build a $200,000 eel ladder. Now, I hate eels because they look like snakes. So I don't know why anybody would not want, the Simpsons, the snake whacking day kind of thing. I'm all in favor of that. But we had to build this eel ladder, which, again, happy to do it. It's an endangered species, so the eels can climb up over the dam and they can go down and they can swim their way to Quebec. And then if they make it to the Atlantic Ocean, good for them.
Stay there.
But the point is we build this $200,000 thing because the environmental assessment driven by the federal government tells us we have to. You go down the river a bit, you run into Hydro-Quebec's dams. They don't have these eel ladders. So at best, they're getting chewed up in their turbines. If they magically elevate and get over those turbines, it's an active fishery in New Brunswick. So this is just it's the lack of consistency from one end to the other that is going to kill us. And again, I simply ask, can you imagine building the St. Lawrence Seaway today? Can you imagine building the rail line today? Because tripling the electrical grid going forward is effectively doing all those two projects times 3. I just don't know how we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm quite new to this file of energy, but another example, Bryce, is we're really interested in Canada North at looking at an innovative solution where companies would contribute access energy and then be able to take it back out of their own, supplemental grid. You can see how complicated that would be. You'd need software to go between traditional grid back to the other one. But again, where else to do this but in the largest tech park? What an awesome place for us to lead. But you can see where, we haven't even talked at the provincial level, and I know you mentioned IESO, but this requires something behind the meter and, bi-directional exchange of energy. That's kind of a hard stop right now in terms of regulation and policy. So maybe, Heidi, given the fact that we don't have the province here, but the role of IESO in this and how do we think they could really help enable this innovation and these innovative ideas?
Yeah, well, so, I work with IESO, but not for them, so I can't speak on their behalf. But what I can tell you is that there's very active conversations around the need for coordinated planning. We know that we have, over 70 LDCs in the province of Ontario.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, okay, there we go. But we have, primarily one gas distribution business, and so if we're going to start anywhere, it's going to be at least at the level with which we can do the transmission as well as the gas planning. So, it's got to start. We are going to have to probably start small, like pick a region, start to do some coordinated planning with that. Really work transparently with one another to understand what are the constraints of the systems, what's the data saying, and really start to be open around what the planning looks like, what that future looks like, and what's necessary to make sure that we're meeting expectations. There's always system constraints. I don't want to put up roadblocks. There's a lot of hurdles, but it starts with the conversation, and the conversation has started. We now just need to be moving into action.
Yeah, and I do feel that if there's one good thing that's coming out of our southern friend, it's this need to figure out our supply chain and to figure out ways to do things faster. We have to speed this up. So, yeah, being in the city of Ottawa is interesting. You've got NCC land, you've got the federal government, you've got a lot of different things to think about. I could only imagine. How are we doing on time? I forgot my 5 minutes. Okay.
Can I just pick up on that for 1
Yeah.
minute? I know we're kind of picking on government a bit, but I think it's really also important to recognize that we also need a regulation environment that's going to allow and facilitate all of this to happen as well. And so it isn't just around government, but there's a regulator that we're all accountable to as well. And I think that it's important that those are synced up and that we also have, regulation frameworks that are simple and will allow us to facilitate and move quickly.
And are predictable.
100%. 100%.
Okay, so maybe I'll just finish it up here, and I'll ask everyone. So maybe we'll just start. Maybe we'll start with you, Heidi, and go down and let Bryce give our final thoughts. But I guess my question for all of you would be, how do we move our energy systems, our strategy forward to ensure that Ottawa remains a leader in energy? So that could be a lot of things to different people, but if you had your moment in time to make any changes, to make any suggestions, what would that be?
Yeah, I'd say more of what we have been doing in terms of working together. We absolutely need to continue to innovate. That's going to be probably maybe the name of the day today. If we're looking at sustainable solutions and outcomes, and I would say also a bias to action. So, there's a lot of planning and a lot of discussion, but I think that the time is now, and we need to start mobilizing on some of the good work that has started and start to get some real results out there.
I'm going to take a bit of a different approach and say, it's an overall approach in terms of not just an energy problem, but when you're looking at solving the energy problem, what else is important with that? And I think about our local economy and what we need to do to build up the local economy. When you look at energy, I think about economic development in terms of what are we doing? Are we attracting the right companies? Are we attracting the right people? Can we attract them? That's part of it. That's going to bring benefits for everybody in terms of having that piece. The other two pieces is really around climate change. Are we helping in terms of lowering our GHGs and basically implementing our master plan that we have here and building that resiliency into the energy structures that we do have in place today. And then looking across our city and saying, is this a livable city? What do we need in terms of energy that helps build in that livability within the city of Ottawa and within, not only our residents, but our businesses as well. So it's kind of a bigger impact in terms of what we're doing with the energy issues that we have in front of us, and I think the positive benefits that it'll bring to our city. Last word to you, Bryce.
I think, building on Wendy's point, I think if you were, and I sucked at math, so I think if you were to do the equation, it's very simple. Energy equals economic growth. You don't get one without the other. So you take that as a positive, you take that as a given, and then you go forward from there and say, what we've built over the past 120 years is remarkable, but it's not going to be anywhere near enough to get us the next 30. We have to fundamentally change the way we do business, the way we do projects, the way we finance projects. Everything has got to be put on the table if we're going to meet the goals that have been set out for us by the three levels of government. So,
Great. Thank you all so very much. Is there questions? Oh, is there anyone? Is there time? Is there questions? No.
Oh, yeah.
Does anyone have any burning questions?
Here's one.
There we go.
Got one, yeah.
Is this working? Okay, great. Thank you so much. This is actually a really interesting panel discussion. My question, I'll be very quick, is really, we've described a lot of the things that need to happen. I'm really interested to know if any of you have suggestions as to what we can do. Say the next government is in the room. What would you advise them on, and how would you suggest they move forward, especially with EVs and other things to get a bigger grid? What are some practical things that you would suggest? Thank you.
I'll pick up on the EVs as an example. There are 6,480 electric vehicles in Ottawa. Ontario was doing better with electric vehicles. They took away the subsidy. The subsidy matters. If you look at the places where there is a subsidy for electric vehicles, they have a much higher pickup. So British Columbia, I think, is 18%. So I think there's opportunities there. We're trying to take advantage of them and help building charging stations as quickly and rapidly as we possibly can. But just know, the city's ready, the grid's ready. If everybody here stepped out and bought not Tesla, if you all went out and bought a Hyundai, we'd be ready for it.
I might just add to that. I think it's also really important to create an environment that allows us to have economic investment in the province of Ontario, and not just in Ottawa. And Bryce talked about that earlier. Like, investment really is or energy is economic development. So creating an environment where we can flourish and foster. We've talked a lot about innovation here. That comes through that opportunity. So creating an environment for that would be helpful.
Mitchell?
Thanks, Kelly. Mitchell Beer from the Ottawa Climate Action Fund. First of all, thank you everybody for such a really interesting and timely panel. A question to Bryce. First of all, your analogy between Ontario's level of support for nuclear and North Korea's is something I will carry with me for as long as I breathe. I just had to say.
You're the only one that got
I
the
hope
joke.
others will too. You've talked about the massive challenge that the grid is going to face in this expansion coming up. You're saying it's essentially impossible, that everything has to be on the table. So a question for you and for all of the panelists. To what degree do you think behind the meter generation, behind the meter thermal, can reduce some of that strain on central systems so that we'll actually have a chance of catching up and keeping up? And maybe specifically with reference to some of the conversation going on in Canada North.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer is all of the above. Is kind of where I've come at this from, which is we need electricity, we need gas, we need thermal. If you look at what we're doing at Zibi, that's effectively a thermal plant. If you're looking at what we're trying to do with the city or with the new hospital build, that is effectively a thermal plant as well. So we're there. We agree. It's part of the answer. It's part of the solution. I don't know that it is going to be enough to catch up, to use your words, but give me all of the above and give me more. Give me distributed energy resources. Give me community-based solar. Give me apparently I'm not allowed to say wind, but give me wind. I don't give a rat's ass. I just need more power. So give me more power. Simple. And clean and green is good.
I was just going to say, looking at those options, other energy options, I think is really important. That's what, everyone in the room, everyone in the community needs to think about. It's not just about the gas and it's not just about the electricity. It's what else can we do to power what we need.
Hello. Lots of great information, but I just want to circle back that we're a city building summit and remind people that housing is the engine of the economy. That's what drives everything here. And as I said earlier, we have the capacity of building 11,000 houses. This year we'll build under 4. So that's $1.2 billion in development fees that aren't being collected by the city. That's about 12,000 home builder constructors that are out of work. And when I suggest collaboration with the government, these 12,000 workers, of course, are not paying income tax, but the government is also paying them unemployment. If we could take a look at, let's put housing back going strong, we're now starting to pay taxes, we're not paying unemployment, and all these things you're talking about is predicated on dollars and cents. So unless we build the houses that Terry Matthews back here wants for his employees, and we want to build a great city, we have to put places for them to live. And the city is telling us we should be building 15,000 houses to make this goal for 2031. And we built 3,000 last year and 4,000 this year. That is not where we should be going. So I'm just saying to everyone here, we need, again, as I said earlier, keep everyone accountable. Let's get the development fees cut. Let's get the feds subsidizing and stop paying unemployment. Put people back to work. Start paying development fees and start paying property taxes, and let's get the city going.
Kelly and I talk a lot about Ottawa Hydro and Bryce, and we'll do anything to keep you busy in Canada.
Yes, we do.
We also talk about the congestion on the Queensway and whether Wesley Clover Parks should give horse and carriage instead of cars that are moving towards electric. We may have to do a little shoveling on the Queensway. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll take the last question.
I think that all of us in the room who've looked at heat pumps and who have an old house have suffered from the sticker shock. Retrofitting is really expensive. So it makes a lot of sense to build better from the get-go. So I guess my question is the city or Hydro or even Enbridge on the demand management side somehow flexing any muscles that we start building better, there's other cities, right, that are saying no more gas hookups for new developments. So what's Ottawa doing in that sense? Because it just makes so much sense because retrofitting is so costly and that'll fall back on us. So in line with also, Bryce, what you were saying in terms of we got to think a bit further out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use the hospital as an example. So, you know, Cam, I think Cam's here, over there. So Cam runs a hospital. He's preoccupied every day with providing 21st century healthcare. No one goes to a hospital to eat, right? You just don't. You go to a hospital because you need healthcare. Cam shouldn't be in the business of energy. That should be my business. That's what I'm in the business of. That's what my engineers do. Cam shouldn't be hiring electrical engineers to manage his plant. I do that. So we have a perfect example of a symbiotic relationship where we're doing what we do, he's doing what he does. We're all better off as a result of it. Now we're going to overbuild that plant down there because we want to build for the community. We want to build we want to future-proof. So, you know, the conversation that we've had with Cam and his team is, okay, great. As you develop the hospital, you're going to develop up Carling Avenue. As you go up Carling Avenue, you've got 4 or 5 big key developers that are there building condos. Well, those condos, there's a price on the square footage of those condos. And if they can sell one more condo and take away the HVAC system that's occupying that space because they're connected into the new hospital grid, that's a win-win for them. So that's novel, that's innovative, that's new, that's us. That's what we're capable of doing when we work together as partners. So that's just one example. We can use the airport as another example. We can use Zibi as another example. The point is as I think we said earlier, it's the innovation that's going to drive forward these things. Are heat pumps part of the solution? Of course they are. Absolutely they are. And you know, the prices come down dramatically as well. So again, give me all power sources. I'm not biased against any one of them.
Awesome. I was just going to say another great example is the Zero Exchange pilot project that we have with one of the local developers and Hydro as well, where we're using basically the heating and cooling that comes from the sewer to heat and cool a couple of buildings down on the Breton Flats. So again, it's about that, you know, innovation and creativity in terms of looking at other alternatives.
Thank you. I think we're over time, so I'll let our panelists go. Thank you so much.
And just a little bit more, Julia. I think we get a concept of what Cam does and an entrepreneur, but I just want to pick on you for a second here, and then we're going to come right back to Cam. So as acting VP Research at University of Ottawa, give us a deeper sense of what you do or what you lead maybe.
Yeah, so I'm in charge of supporting like all research activities, helping researchers, get funding for research activities, for innovation, and recently we started the Ottawa Academic Health Network, where we work with the Ottawa Hospital and their affiliated research institute. So we have 6 affiliated research institutes working with the University of Ottawa, and we want to bring better health to the Ottawa community.
But give us the quick update as to where the hospital's at, and then we'll turn on to today's topic.
Yeah, so if you drive by the site, corner of Preston and Carling, we are under construction. So the garage is going up, the top part, which is where the main hospital is being built, the sort of the first phases of excavation and digging the hole is being done, and we're in the final phase of design. It's about a 2.5 million square foot building, so there's a lot of design. So the approach we've taken is, as we're doing the design, you're building components to it. And so as we build the parking garage, dig the hole to some extent, we'll finish the design, which even if we had 3 times the number of people, it still takes a good 8 months to get all the design done through a set of tender documents. The plan is to get that done by December. We'll have financial close. The garage is done in December. And then as we head into sort of winter, spring, we award the final phase, which is the main build. And you start building that, start building the building, which, you know, we're, with everything that's happening globally, between the number and the timeline, it moves around, but we're at least a good 5-year build to get it fully opened.
So give us 1 minute on Luminix, and we're going to watch a really cool video.
Sure, yeah. So just to set the stage, given there's a room of entrepreneurs here, just a little bit more background on myself to give context to what we've done here. This would be my 5th business. I spent my teens and my early 20s in oil and finance in New York, and then building oil companies and service companies in my 20s. I went into post-war development and international development for my 30s. So from a muscle memory training perspective, you learn totally different discipline, and you learn time. And then into the 40s, saw an opportunity. Luminix, very briefly, we're one of the largest LED lighting businesses in the country. The strategic plan was initially a 15-year plan to digitalize ceiling spaces and use that channel to basically create supercomputers in the ceilings. The AIMS technology, so on an energy efficient basis. So today, we provide about 1.5 billion of market cap every year to our customers, just based on their energy savings. So about 10% of the country, at least 10% of the country, is living, operating, or working in Luminix environments every day. So that was an important part of the channel, build a platform. AIMS, the technology we'll talk about in a moment, it stands for the Artificially Intelligent Monitoring System. And it was born out of Boston Children's Hospital. So it spent about a decade in development there, going through clinical and engineering review.